No one thought that girl would get here. Not because she lacked talent, but because no one thought an athlete from the Philippines, where tennis courts often sat next to public restrooms, with surfaces made of crushed seashells, could compete on equal footing with players nurtured in million-dollar academies. Her name is Alexandra Eala, 20 years old, world number 68, and the first Filipino player to enter the WTA Top 100. It sounds ordinary until you know this. For much of her early life, Alexandra had to play on broken courts, where one half was a basketball court, the other a volleyball court. No locker rooms, no professional coaches, and no role models to follow, because before her, no one had ever done it. So how did she get from there to the US Open, amidst a forest of superstars trained since childhood? Alexandra's story is the most vivid proof of a truth the media rarely discusses. Lack of resources does not equal lack of potential. In this video, you will see the journey of a young girl who only discovered tennis by following her older brother to the court, taught to play by her grandfather, a man who had never professionally coached, by reading books, watching YouTube, and guessing techniques through the TV. A girl who had no national idol, who had to define her own playing style based on personal feeling, and one who learned a single truth from Nadal. True strength lies in the capacity to endure. You might not care about tennis, but this story will make you reconsider how many geniuses are overlooked simply because they were born in the wrong place. And the unbelievable reveal at the 14-minute mark will make you question your eyes. Don't look away, because you are about to embark on a journey where passion confronts prejudice. And if you like stories of overcoming adversity, don't forget to subscribe to Pro Tennis 360, where we tell the journeys that Western media often ignores. Starting on crushed shells and asking, is it worth the chase? When American kids started playing tennis with lessons in luxurious academies, using custom carbon rackets and professionally trained coaches, a little girl in Manila, Alexandra Eala, was practicing her serve on a court surface no one outside the Philippines has ever heard of, the shell court. Sounds like a joke? For Alexandra, that's where she learned her first forehand. The shell court, literally, is a surface made of crushed seashells mixed with dust, gravel, and whatever could provide friction. The court could be slippery, easily peeled, sometimes even sharp with fragments. But in the Philippines, that was the closest thing to a clay court a child could touch. And for a child like Alexandra, just that was a luxury. The Eala family wasn't wealthy. She wasn't born into a traditional tennis family, didn't have prestigious scholarships, and no early sponsors. Everything started with her grandfather, the only one who believed the girl could go far, even though he had never taken any coaching course. He just read books, watched YouTube, and started training us, Alexandra recounted in an interview. He would hold the racket, guess the techniques of professional athletes, and then show us. No statistics, no movement analysis charts. Just the belief that effort would overcome the starting point. And the girl believed it. Because when you stand on an uneven court, not knowing if your next sprint will trip you over a sharp stone, you learn to react faster than any child raised in ideal conditions. It was from that shell court that Alexandra began to forge her fighting reflex, running for the point, hitting to be recognized. And every return was a statement that she belonged there. But the thing that truly changed everything wasn't skill, but a family conversation. Just once, her mother asked, "Are you sure you want to pursue this sport that no one here has ever succeeded in?" The girl just nodded. No one knew that simple nod would change Philippine sports history. Making the decision, leaving family at age 13. When Alexandra was 13, her family made a life-altering decision, sending their daughter away from the Philippines to Spain for specialized tennis training at the Rafael Nadal Academy. Imagine being a teenage girl, never having lived away from home, never having left Asia, having to leave her grandfather, the man who held her hand through every serve, to step into an environment where everyone was professional. Everyone was tens of steps ahead of you. No friends, no mother tongue, no family, only one mentor, Rafa Nadal, the icon of endurance, of the spirit to fight for every ball until death. In Mallorca, everything was different. Modern hard courts, video analysis of every shot, fitness controlled by technology. But there, Alexandra also understood that to survive, she had to learn to endure, the way Nadal always did. Rafa's capacity to endure is almost unmatched, she shared. And that's what I'm trying to learn, perseverance through the worst parts of this profession. While her peers could go home every weekend, eat their mother's cooking, and relax after every tournament, Alexandra stayed at the academy. Every call back to Manila lasted only a few minutes, sometimes just long enough to hear her grandfather's reminder, "Don't doubt yourself." No doubt. No doubt. It was a philosophy, a guiding principle. And the most heartbreaking part? Alexandra never had the chance for her grandfather to see her compete professionally in person. He passed away not long after she left. From then on, every match was not just for the score. It was her way of reconnecting with the man who taught her tennis by reading old magazines and watching TV through a fuzzy antenna. Breakthrough at the Junior Grand Slams, but no one noticed. In 2020, while the world was still reeling from the pandemic, a surprising name appeared at the Junior French Open. Alexandra Eala, 15, champion in girls doubles. Asian media reported briefly. ESPN mentioned her in passing. But there was no breaking news moment for major channels, as they had done with Coco Gauff or Emma Raducanu. No power, nationality, no attention. Alexandra wasn't resentful, but she noticed. And what made her stand out wasn't winning, but because after every win, she prayed. Not out of superstition, but out of discipline. When I win a point after a prayer, I repeat the exact same sentence for the next point. If I lose, I change the words. Does that sound obsessive? For Alexandra, it was a system for emotional control in the most solitary sport on the planet. Tennis has no teammates, no coach on the court. Whether you lose or win, you bear it alone. And for this girl from the shell court, finding a way to balance her mind was vital. That same year, she began her professional journey. No wild cards, no PR backing. Every point had to be earned with sweat. The peak came in 2022. Alexandra won the U.S. Open Junior Singles title, officially becoming the first Asian junior player to do so since the time of Sania Mirza. This time, the media had to pay attention, because you couldn't ignore a name that had gone beyond the level of a mere phenomenon. No one is like Filipino fans behind the scenes at the U.S. Open. If you've ever been to the U.S. Open, you'll realize this. European fans are polite, American fans are lively, Japanese fans are orderly. But Filipino fans? They scream Alexandra Eala's name like she's Taylor Swift. I've never seen a nationality that crazy, Alexandra laughed. Walking down the street, you immediately know a Filipino, the eyes, the greeting, and the feeling of family. At the U.S. Open 2023, she walked out of the practice court during Fan Week, and just a few seconds later, a crowd of hundreds had gathered. They chanted slogans, waved flags, brought small children for photos. In their eyes, Alexandra was not just an athlete. She was a symbol. But what touched her the most wasn't the crowd. It was the eyes of the young girls, the ones who looked at Alexandra as living proof that if she can do it, I can too. In the Philippines, sometimes if no one succeeds before you, you don't dare to dream, she said. So the most important thing I want to convey is there's nothing wrong with dreaming big. She mentioned the names of Heidi Lynn Diaz, Olympic gold medalist in weightlifting, the women's national football team, basketball, volleyball players. She wasn't alone. Women's sports in the Philippines are on the rise. But despite all the new names, she is still the first to step into the WTA Top 100. She knows well, this is not just personal glory. This is a validation for an entire generation, that even when starting from a cracked tennis court, you can still compete at Flushing Meadows. Professional debut. There's nothing glamorous about it. People often imagine that playing professionally means 5-star hotels, business class flights, and dinner with sponsors. Alexandra laughed when she heard that. Some weeks I have to share a room with 3 people, sleeping on a folding couch. The food is instant noodles, and if I happen to lose the first round, I bear all the cost myself. That's the untold side of the lower tiers of the professional tennis system. When you're not in the top 50, you don't have money. No big sponsorships. No logistics support. And every time you compete, you have to choose carefully. Go to this tournament to earn points or save money. Alexandra once traveled to 2 consecutive tournaments in Europe by sleeper train because it was cheaper than flying. While her French opponents were closely followed by medical staff, nutritionists, and tactical coaches, she had to watch her match tapes on her phone and adjust her strategy herself. And that's why winning in the US Open main draw was so special. Not because she won, but because she got there every step of the way herself, from the shell court to Flushing Meadows, without anyone paving the way. Amidst a host of faces from the IMG, Moratoglu academies, or the USTA system, Alexandra is the anomaly, carrying no tennis pedigree. She is loved by the audience for her gritty energy, the type of person who doesn't need to be flashy, just persistent. And when people ask, is tennis worth it? She only replies, I am living my dream. 30 weeks a year, traveling the world, doing what I love, meeting new people. Not everyone has this privilege. The confrontation with mood. You're not allowed to be sad. In tennis, you are judged not just by your forehand, but also by how you lose. For Alexandra, defeat used to be a personal crisis. Not because of the score, but because of the feeling of disappointing an entire nation's expectation. There were times I felt so much pressure I didn't dare to open Instagram, she admitted. Because every time I lost, there was a series of comments. I thought you would win? What's this, a first-round loss? No one teaches you how to handle the spotlight, especially when you don't have a PR team or a sports psychologist. At the Nadal Academy, Alexandra was taught about mental toughness, but reality outside is completely different. One day, she walked onto the court after an argument with her family over the phone. The next day, she had to answer to the press why her performance dropped. There was no one to mediate. You are the athlete, the spokesperson, the role model, all in one. And that's when she turned back to the only thing that kept her steady since childhood: personal belief. I learned that if I don't believe in myself, no one else will do it for me. She started meditating, journaling, setting time limits for social media use. And more importantly, she learned to accept defeat as part of the profession, not an attack on her self-worth. In a loss at a small tournament in Thailand, there were only a few spectators. But afterward, a 12-year-old girl approached and said, "You are the reason I play tennis." That's when Alexandra realized, win or lose, she was still inspiring. And that is something no ranking board can measure. Preparing for the big explosion. Ready to upset the WTA order? If you ask the experts, who is the most dangerous dark horse in the WTA's Gen Z generation, the name Alexandra Eala will appear more often than you think. Not because she hits harder, but because she plays tennis as if she has nothing left to lose. She is not defined by the system. A coach who followed her commented, "That's what makes her unpredictable to opponents." She is not locked into a formula, baseline grinder, or serve and volley. She transforms according to the opponent, according to the court surface. And above all, she is willing to take a punch longer than anyone else. For 2024, Alexandra plans to enter the entire Grand Slam system: Australian Open, Roland Garros, Wimbledon, and the US Open. Not just to be present, but to make an impact. Everyone says the WTA right now is a game for Europe and America, she said. I just want to do the opposite. She is training more with a fitness expert who once worked with Carlos Alcaraz. A new tactical team is analyzing every potential opponent. And Alexandra herself has withdrawn from exhibition tournaments to focus all her energy on the major season. She doesn't need to rush. At 20, her physical peak is still ahead. But in her eyes, there is always an energy that makes people feel. Alexandra didn't come to learn. She came to fight. And if the WTA history has seen explosions from underestimated names, Alexandra could be the next one before anyone even notices. Not to be better than anyone, but not to disappoint those who believe in me. The higher she climbs, Alexandra realizes a truth that few young athletes are prepared for. You are not just playing for yourself. When she entered the Grand Slam main draw, her name appeared on national television. social media exploded with the image of a girl carrying the Philippine flag at the US Open. Brands started to notice. Politicians wanted to shake hands. Academies in her hometown hung her picture by the entrance. And suddenly, every shot carried the weight of collective belief. When I was little, I played for fun. But now I play for thousands of kids watching. The ones who once thought they would never be here just because they were born in the wrong place. The difference between Alexandra and most players in the top 100 is not in skill, but in purpose. In an interview, when asked, "What are you most proud of in your career?" she didn't mention her junior Grand Slam title or her WTA ranking. She just said, "Every time a little girl comes up to me and says, 'You are the reason I dared to pick up a racket,' I know I'm doing the right thing." That's why, when you watch Alexandra play, you will see a subtle difference. She doesn't celebrate too wildly, nor does she complain for too long. Because, in her mind, this is no longer a personal game. It is a mission. In the most exhausting moments, when facing a heart-stopping match point, she often closes her eyes and repeats her grandfather's words. No doubt. No turning back. That is what keeps her steady when her opponents have private coaches, expert support teams, and an entire country behind them. And her? She has a memory of late afternoon practices on the shell court, when the red sun shone on the cracks in the surface. And her grandfather, in his old shirt, shouted, "Again, one more shot." It was there that invisible will was forged by love and limits. One day, they will stop calling me the Filipino girl and start calling me champion. In every tournament, Alexandra's name tag is always followed by the line PHI, the abbreviation for the Philippines. At first, she felt proud. Then, she started to feel confined within that label. They don't call me a dangerous player. They call me the friendly Asian girl. Not an opponent to be wary of, but the interesting new face from Southeast Asia. She understands. Prejudice doesn't always take the form of harshness. It can come from a compliment. But hidden beneath is a subtle segregation. Alexandra doesn't want to be a special case. She wants to be seen as a real player. One who can defeat the top seed, one who can win major titles, one who deserves to be in that position not because of her origin, but because of merit. My dream was never to be the first Filipino to do something. My dream is to be world number one. And that journey, though still far, is no longer a fantasy. When you're used to playing tennis amidst the sound of motorbikes and neighborhood announcements, competing on Wimbledon's center court sounds strangely quiet. When you're used to stringing your own racket, washing your clothes, and setting your flight schedule with Google Sheets, having management handle logistics is just a bonus. And when the whole world begins to turn its back after a surprising loss, you still know. Thousands of people will watch your every point, not out of expectation, but because they were once you. They were once the children looking through the ripped net, thinking the tennis dream was only for America and Europe, until they saw her. If you have to pray before every point, then do it. Just don't give up. In a world where elite sports are increasingly dominated by data, AI, and strategy, Alexandra Eala still believes in the very human things. A whispered prayer, a nod to her grandfather in her mind, a strange feeling every time she sees the red, blue, and yellow of her national flag appearing amidst a sea of European flags. If I have to pray before every point, then I will. If I have to change the prayer after every loss, I will too. As long as I don't give up. It sounds naive, but that is the philosophy of someone who knows she is fighting the system and still chooses to continue. She doesn't play to be called the next big thing by the media. She doesn't show up to please a sponsor. She plays to create a new standard, where being born on a shell court is no longer a barrier. And perhaps that is what makes Alexandra more dangerous than any player in the top 100. Because she doesn't just play to win, she plays to prove the system can be wrong. When a girl who once had to change her prayer just for losing a point can step onto center court, face superstars, and still maintain her composure, that is not just sports. That is a statement. Not everyone will become world number one. But Alexandra Eala has forced the entire world to look seriously at a part of the world they once dismissed as a trough. What do you think? Does a big dream depend on where you are born? Is athletic level determined by the country code after your name? Leave your opinion below. And if you want to continue exploring the stories overlooked by the media, subscribe to Pro Tennis 360. Because here, we don't just recount the titles. We tell the reason why you can't take your eyes off every shot.